We are celebrating one of the most iconic figures in entertainment and television history, the extraordinary Rosemary. Yes, of course, many know as Sally Rogers on the iconic Dick Van Dyke Show, but so much more. Fabulous film star, television star, and a brilliant singer, too, an iconic singer. And we are blessed because her daughter, who is celebrating her mom in such a beautiful way, is with us here on the show. Yes. Hey, everybody. Jim Masters here, coming to you from the East Coast of the United States in the New York area. This is the Jim Masters Show, live entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series where we spotlight extraordinary people, we interact with our viewers, and we're bringing back the lost art of conversation. And we're doing it today with Georgiana Noopy, Guy Rodrigues, daughter of Rosemary. And she's here to tell us, of course, some wonderful behind the scenes about so many incredible things her mother has been a part of over the years as we get ready to mark Rosemary's 100th birthday. Yeah, in a beautiful, beautiful centennial tribute. Of course, she is truly one of the most beloved figures from television and from entertainment. And here you see on your screen, jot down that date because that's going to be something very, very special as they begin the 100 days of Rosemary's Facts. Yes, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be posted on social media. This is something that's going to be a tribute live on the YouTube channel. And we're so excited to celebrate this. And we are going to be celebrating as well the iconic music of Rosemary. Now, you might not have realized, maybe you just saw her sing on the Dick Van Dyke Show, maybe some other shows and things of that nature over the years, but she had a phenomenal voice, absolutely, and performed on stage. Of course, she was baby Rosie, and we know that. We're going to talk about that as well and what that came from, baby Rosemary. She started as a child star first before anything came her way as far as television. There is the release coming soon of this fabulous CD, which is released in honor of Rosemary's 100th birthday. Rosemary Sings. And as I mentioned, it is filled with incredible songs being released now. So if you are a super fan, you're going to definitely want to pick that up. We're going to tell you how you can do that. As I mentioned, Rosemary is truly one of the most beloved and iconic figures from television and from entertainment and stage and so much more. She is still greatly missed, but her daughter, Georgiana, is celebrating her in style. There are social media pages, there is the website, and a lot of ways that you can interact if you are a Rosemary fan, and millions around the world are. Matter of fact, there are so many people that are fans of Rosemary. Sometimes it even gets overwhelming, which is a beautiful thing. As I mentioned, a wonderful singer over the years, too. And we're going to tout that, but also on the beloved Dick Van Dyke Show with, of course, the gang and her friend, of course, Maury Amsterdam, who I believe she, matter of fact, brought to the Dick Van Dyke Show, which I think was a beautiful thing. They stayed friends for years. One of the most iconic, beloved series. We had Larry Matthews actually on our show, who played Little Richie, and he was iconic and fantastic, and we loved chatting with him. This is one of my personal favorite shows from that time period. I absolutely love the Dick Van Dyke Show. I always have. And they stayed in touch. There is Rosemary with Mary Tyler Moore and Dick Van Dyke, and of course, the extraordinary Carl Reiner. We had Tracy Reiner on the show recently when we were paying homage to Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley. Of course, Tracy, Penny Marshall's daughter, Carl Reiner's granddaughter. You remember, of course, how can you not forget? And this is, how can you not remember, the wonderful Hollywood Squares series, game show series, Peter Marshall and gang. And there she is. Of course, oftentimes she was in the upper square. Here's a wonderful shot of the gang as well. This is the earlier years of Hollywood Squares. another legendary and beloved host, Peter Marshall, of course, hosting that. Tom Bergeron has hosted it. John Davidson as well. We had John Davidson on the show several times. And there she is in the square, the incredible Rosemary. Now, of course, in addition to everything else that I'm telling you here, just some facts and reminders and memories we're celebrating. She was also on the Bob Cummings show. You may remember that as well. And we were just talking, Georgiana and I were talking about Doris Day and filters and things of that nature. Well, of course, she was a good friend of Doris Day, and she was on the Doris Day Show as well. And this is one of the favorite episodes when they were at the gas station. You may remember that. Yeah, we've got some wonderful things to share with all of you here. She is also the author of this wonderful book, Rosemary, of course, Hold the Roses. We're going to talk about that title and why it's called Hold the Roses. That is available at Amazon and many other wonderful locations as well. But as I mentioned, she, a phenomenal performer, singer, nightclub, stage, and so much more, a child star as well. And she did all of that before the television world started knocking on her door. And we are so glad that it did. And she took the baton and ran with it. But her singing is being celebrated beautifully with the centennial coming up. She was on so many different shows. She was on Murphy Brown. And of course, she was even on The Love Boat, Aaron Spelling's production. Lots of movies and shows. Yeah, there she is with Bob Hope. She's greatly missed today, of course. Caroline in the City. They made a return appearance, Rosemary, with Maury Amsterdam. I remember seeing that. Do you remember seeing that? That was iconic. The two of them, hilarious together, then and always. She was also a wonderful friend of Lucille Ball. And you know, we've had Lucy Arnaz on our show. She's a dear friend several times. And I mentioned Cindy Williams, even Cindy Williams, too, as well. And these are just a few of the photos. We have a lot of wonderful things as we here at the Jim Masters Show Live celebrate one of my favorites, and I know one of yours as well. You guys know I work in the industry. I work in television. I work in broadcast and in radio. So to be celebrating such an iconic figure in that world really is a blessing for me as well. So coming to us from just outside the Los Angeles area where she has her wonderful horses. She says it's about 90 degrees right now. Not too bad. We're on the East Coast, 75 and sunny, loving it as we celebrate again this incredible iconic figure, Rosemary. Georgiana is going to be joining us in just a second. I just want to tell you one cool thing that is happening. The estate of Rosemary is launching the centennial celebration honoring the star of stage, screen, radio, and television, whose career spanned 90 years, from baby Rosemary, of course, early on as a child star in vaudeville, to Sally Rogers on the Dick Van Dyke Show, to the top center square in the Hollywood Squares, and the subject of the acclaimed documentary, Wait for Your Laugh. Celebration again, and the release of Rosemary Sings, the complete Mercury recordings and more from Sepia Records in association with the Rosemary Estate is exceptional. Among the 29 classic recordings and rarities are favorite show tunes, standards, and novelty songs, all available on compact disc for the first time. Some may only know Rosemary, as I mentioned, as the comedian from the Dick Van Dyke Show, who sang on the show as well, but didn't realize that she started in the business, again, with her own radio show at the age of 3. And again, for decades, beloved television star and so much more. And her daughter, again, elaborates that just in time to celebrate her centennial year, they're so happy, the family, to finally have a compilation of her mother's music, which her fans have been requesting for years. Really exciting news. So, yeah, look at that smile, right? Just can look at that smile for days. And there she is, of course, with her mom. Without further ado, this is like an Academy Award type of introduction here that I prepared, but all worth it. Let's welcome the very special Georgiana joining us here from just outside Los Angeles. Georgiana, welcome to the Jim Masters Show Live. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Jim. What a marvelous intro. My goodness.
I bet your mother would have loved it, huh?
Oh, are you kidding? She would have said, keep going, keep going, keep
That's right.
going.
She would have said, "Good job, Jimmy."
Yeah, she really would have.
Congratulations. This is spectacular. I mean, what's really exciting is that her fan base, which has always been there, uh, continues to grow even today, right?
Yeah, she actually has more fans now than she did when she was alive. And it grows every single solitary year. And with each thing we've tried to we truly did this whole thing for her fans, because her fans kept asking and demanding. And every time she would sing on the Dick Van Dyke Show, her Facebook page would explode. And oh, how can we hear her sing? How can we get that? And so, because we were so involved with doing the documentary, which was a priority, and she was still alive at that time, so we were doing that. We kind of but she saved everything. Saved
Yes.
65 scrapbooks, at least, if not more, tapes, cassettes, reel to reels, everything.
All the clippings, everything, right?
It took me 3 years to literally clean out her house. 3 years.
Wow.
She saved everything. I mean, when we were doing the documentary, she would make reference. Her memory was astounding. She remembered everything.
Yeah.
And she would make reference to a club that she played, could basically talk about the inside of the club, the color of the wallpaper.
Yeah.
The fact that the cash register there had a bullet hole in it. Stuff like that. And we would go to the scrapbook and we would look at the date, and it was right there. She had the review, she had the restaurants she went to, she had the menus of the restaurants that she went to.
Isn't that incredible?
It was unbelievable. Actually, the Comedy Museum in Jamestown, New York,
great place,
has the scrapbooks and has digitized them. So anybody can go to the Comedy Museum and sit down and look at some of her scrapbooks there.
I would recommend they do that and plan a day or two to go and really immerse yourself.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place.
It's spectacular.
Yeah, it truly is. And they have a place that has her bow in it and one of the suits that she wore and stuff like that. But they fell in love with all of the scrapbooks and all of the material that she had, because it's golden. It truly is.
It really, really is. She started early at age 3. Before even starting, her family initially, was there folks in the entertainment business? What was the inspiration for her to get into the business at such a young age?
Well, I think it first started with her mother. And that's how she actually got on the stage. Her mother was some sort of competition, singing competition, and her mother put her on and as a 3-year-old, and she sang, and she wound up winning the competition, of course. And when she walked up, and they gave her some roses, and she walked off the stage and she said to somebody, "Can somebody please hold my roses? I have to take my bow." This is a 3. And that's how the title of the book came about, because she wanted somebody to hold her roses because she had to take her bow. So then after that, because the word got around that this 3-year-old had a voice like Sophie Tucker, people started to take an interest in her, and her father became her manager. So her father was the one that took her to the various things. And at 5 years old, she had her own radio show on NBC.
Isn't that amazing? Her own radio show at such a young age. And people thought that she was a lot older, like she was a shorter adult, right?
They
They
thought,
didn't.
yeah, they thought she was a 45-year-old little person.
Right.
And so they had to go on the road to prove that she wasn't. So part of that became, oh, there she is.
Cutie,
Isn't
huh?
that great?
Cutie. Yeah. Cutie.
So anyway,
She's already got the pose down early.
oh, please. The one thing about my mother, loved every minute of everything.
Oh, yes.
Never had a bad word to say about the business, working, anything.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as a child star, she became famous, and that was almost during the vaudevillian time. So she would do shows in vaudeville. You didn't just do one show. You did like 10 in one day, or you did 12 in one day. And then in some of the cities, the child labor laws took over. And so her father got arrested because of the child labor laws. So he would go to jail, then they'd bail him out, and then he would come back and she would do her show. And this happened, I think, 127 times. That's what I kind of remember. It's 120. And so he would come out and she would do her show, and that was it.
And that was it. That was incredible. And people started to really pay heed to her incredible talent and voice, and her personality really, really was shining at such an early age, right? Made an indelible difference with so many people early on. They started to notice her talent, right?
Well, yes, and including the mob, which was around, of course, Chicago, the East Coast was that way. And one day she talks about in her book that this limo pulled up, and it was Al Capone's limo, and he wanted to see this kid. So her father, kind of being a halfway hood at the same time, so they got in the car, and she went, and she basically described the place, described the table, and and they referred to her as the kid, the baby. That was it.
It was
and Capone said to my grandfather, you take care of her. And it was like, oh, okay. I certainly will.
Yes, sir. Right.
And that was it. But throughout her life, she always had some sort of connection with the mob, which even became stronger later on when Vegas came into the picture.
Vegas.
But she started from there, and then she kind of started to grow up. And she was at that awkward teenage thing as to, what do you're not a baby anymore, but you're not really an adult. So she was booked in a couple of nightclubs and stuff like that. And then, after that, she was extremely popular. I mean, when she was a child star, she was more popular than Shirley Temple. I don't think Shirley Temple was even born then. So she became like an icon. And this kid, she actually, a very quick story, because of the child labor law, she was the first one to ever sync music, because she went on stage and they said, well, we can't have this 6-year-old singing, because that's cruel. That's terrible to have her sing. So they had a recording of her. So they played the recording behind the curtain, and she lip synced to her own singing. And she said, I was the first one to ever lip sync.
That's it, right?
No, it's true. It's
yes.
true. And she had all these firsts. She said, I was the first one to have a single name. I was always booked as, Rosemary.
Exactly.
And then she said, and then later on came Cher and all the other ones, but she said, I was the first.
I was the very first. She
always a trendsetter. Her documentary, she said, I was the first. So anyway, that's it. It's her, and she loved performing.
Yeah.
She was basically supporting her family. She was basically supporting, her father. Any money that she made, if she would have gotten the money that she made in those years, she'd have been a very wealthy woman. But her father took it all. So she and her father, towards as she started to grow up she and her father really didn't get along all that well.
Yeah. Right.
Especially when she wanted to get married, or especially when she fell in love with my father. So that became a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. And your father, an iconic figure, of course, in the music world, Bobby Guy. And of course, they had a wonderful love affair together, and
They had a beautiful marriage together. He died
yeah,
young.
early, right? And that sort of set her into a little bit of a tailspin. But yet the dear friends and folks who cared about her, like Dean Martin and others, sort of brought her in and said, "Hey, let get out there and keep performing." What was your
There he
father?
is.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad.
Yes. A wonderful photo we have there, right?
Yeah, that's a great photo of him.
Tell us about him.
Well, he was a wonderful musician. And when he originally played in the Kay Kaiser band, and then he was in the Service.
Oh, yeah.
And my mother saw him in probably playing in some band or something, and they had a mutual attraction immediately.
Yeah.
And they became, and she had even told her best friend, she said, "I'm going to marry that guy."
Yeah.
And her friend went, "What? Come on." No, "I'm going to marry that guy. That is the guy I'm going to marry." And he was in the Kay Kaiser band, which, if some of the old Kay Kaiser films, he's in. I mean, he became a celebrity in his own right through some of those films. But he had made the choice to come out to California because he was playing in the East. And he had told her, he said, "Look, I'm going to move, and you're either going to go with me," or, because her father was doing everything to try to basically break it up. And she said, "No, I'm going with you." She said, "I'm going." And they eloped. She, the old thing of throwing the suitcase out of the window and the whole thing. Her best friend was there and caught the suitcase and got it was, I'm telling you, it's
just like a movie, right?
It's just like a movie. And they came and they went to City Hall after they threw the suitcase out. They went to the New York City Hall and they got married, and they got in a car and they came out here. And he said, because he knew he had work out here, he was going to do the Bing Crosby show and things like that. And he was booked out here because everybody knew that he was a wonderful, wonderful musician. And so when he came out here, he said, "I have work out here." He said, "So that's it." She wasn't quite sure what the heck she was going to do because she had been playing the clubs back east. But she got somebody, she got a manager and everything, and she started to play a couple of the local clubs here in California. But he mainly was the breadwinner at that time because he was constantly working, and the more he worked and the more people knew he was out here, the more he worked. Every day he had something. Every day he was walking out the door. And because he was such a good musician, and I have a pretty good ear, being who my mother is and who my father is. So if somebody sings a little flat or there's a little, it's like somebody sticking a needle in me. And but my father had a tone that was very special. And on some of these cuts from on the CD, he's actually on them. In fact, he's on a lot of them. And when I was listening to him for the first time, because I hadn't heard 90% of these, and I would listen and I would say to the to the producer who was helping us doing this, I would say, my father's on that cut. And she would say, well, let me look. And she looks, she goes, yeah, he's on it. And she goes, how do you know that? I said, I can hear his tone. So, and composers, musicians, he was the first trumpet player on staff at NBC. But they had such a wonderful, they truly adored each other. And when he passed away, it was during the Dick Van Dyke Show. It was during the 4th year of the Dick Van Dyke Show. She wanted to quit. She didn't want to do it. She didn't think she could. She goes, how can I go out there and be funny now?
Right.
And it was a very difficult time. It was a deep, deep depression that she got into. John Rich, who was the director of Dick Van Dyke at that time, came over to the house and stayed with her all night long and sat with her and talked her into basically coming back. Because she really didn't think that she could do it. And so she said, all right, I'll come back. And that's how she finished off the year. It's such an iconic show.
Absolutely.
That one of the things that I insisted go into the documentary is the residual scale back then is nothing like it is now.
Right.
Because after 1967, I think it is she didn't make $1 off the show.
Isn't that amazing? People will be very surprised to hear that.
A lot of people, when we were screening the film and that was mentioned, every time the audience would gasp. Every time. It was one of those. And the people that have made the money off of the Dick Van Dyke Show are the people that owned it, which is Carl Sheldon Leonard, Dick Van Dyke, and Danny Thomas. And those are, so as the show, and as we're sitting here now, it's running somewhere. I guarantee it's running somewhere.
Yeah, all around the world. Yeah,
but it's not like it is now, like with Friends. That their residual scale amazes me. But I get residuals from all the sitcoms that she did.
Yeah.
And I got one last week from Alf. She did an
Alf. Oh, that's right.
Remember that show?
Yes.
And I said, oh, and I opened it up and I said, oh my God, Alf. And it 38 cents. All right.
I hope you banked it.
All right. I'm going for it. All right. So we got one actually when we were doing the documentary. Jason Weiss, who is the producer director, I had gotten the mail and I said, oh boy, here comes a residual. Oh boy, because we were trying to raise money to keep the film going. We even did a Kickstarter thing in order to try to raise money because we really didn't have that much money.
Exactly right.
And he says, can I see it? And I said, please be my guest. And I handed him the envelope. And the look on his face when he opened it up was priceless. And I said, how much is it? He said, 1 cent. 1 cent. I said, cost him more to mail it.
Penny for your thoughts.
So he asked if he could keep it. I said, yeah, okay, that one you can have.
Spend it wisely.
He framed it and put it in his office. It's 1 cent.
That's amazing. And of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show being so iconic and beloved and so beautifully cast with all of the characters, just love it all. And she worked so well with, of course, Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore, and everybody. She had this wonderful friendship that was long lasting with Maury Amsterdam, right? The two of them just, and did she suggest that he be a part of the series? I had heard that she really worked hard to get him on that show.
Well, what happened was she had known Maury back in the old days because Maury was writing jokes for all of the comics. I
Oh, he
mean,
was the
truly,
epic.
truly,
Yeah.
he was known as the joke machine.
The guy.
And he so they had been friends way before Dick Van Dyke. And in fact, when she started to change her nightclub act and add comedy, who did she call? She called Maury. So at the time that the Dick Van Dyke Show was being formed, Bob Cummings was also forming another show. So it was kind of a weird situation at the time. But she said, all right, I think the fact that Danny Thomas was involved, and she also knew Danny Thomas, again, from the old nightclub days. This is really, the saying, it's not a gang, it's a club.
Yes.
And this was a club. This was a camaraderie of show business at that time that is truly wonderful. Unfortunately, I don't think it exists today, but everybody took care of everybody. They really did.
Yeah.
And so when the show came up and she said, I'm going to go in, Dan, and Sheldon Leonard had seen her perform in Vegas. And she was, outside of Dick, she was the first one booked for the show. She went in and Sheldon said, I wanted the best. I want you in this show. And she said, okay, what is the show? And they said, well, we're going to call it the Dick Van Dyke Show. And she said, what's a Dick Van Dyke?
I remember.
And they said, well,
I remember hearing that story.
And they said, well, it's this guy on Broadway. He's doing Bye Bye Birdie.
Bye Bye Birdie. And that's how he was discovered,
all of that.
right?
And so she said, oh, and then, so they started to describe the show to her about the writers and about the fact that Carl was on your show of shows, and it was based on a lot of his stuff from working with Sid Caesar and things like that. So she loved that idea because they had told her, you're going to be one of the writers. You're going to be right there. And a woman at that time had never, you didn't see that on television all that much. She was actually the first to do that. Later on came Marlo Thomas, and then Mary had her own show and all of that. But for her to be on an equal basis with these writers. So she said to them, who have you got for the second writer? They said, well, we haven't booked him yet. She said, what about Maury Amsterdam? And Carl thought about it and said, that's not a bad idea. He said, I had someone else in mind, and I don't know who that was. But he said, and then Carl, being Carl, said, it'd be great to have Maury on the set, because if I get stuck for a joke, I can go to Maury. And
he's right there.
Trust me, a lot of those office scenes are Maury Amsterdam jokes, a lot. So she came home, and I was there, and she literally ran to the phone because Maury was living in Yonkers at the time. And she said, Maury, you got to get out here right now. And he said, what? So I'm telling you, you got to get out here right now. So he hopped on a plane, and Maury was the second one cast after her. Actually, Mary was actually the last. I think Larry Matthews was cast after that. And then I think Mary was the last one because Danny Thomas had seen her.
Yeah.
And she wanted to do his show originally. She was starting out. She was fresh and didn't know anything. And Danny Thomas made the statement. He said, how is anybody going to look at her as being related to me with her nose and my nose? And so Mary got cast and learned very fast. And that's how the show got cast. But it was a group of people that they just worked like a machine. They really did.
Filmed at the iconic Desilu Studios as well, of course, right? And I
Mhm.
know Lucille Ball came in on several occasions to sort of observe, passing through, and really liked
Yes,
what they were
true.
doing, which I think was really something extra special. And your mother had a friendship with Lucille Ball. We just had Lucy Arnaz on recently again, and
Mhm.
she's wonderful. And uh, your mother had this great friendship with Lucy, huh?
Oh, they had a fabulous friendship. And uh, very quick story: Lucy and Desi were shooting the Long Long Trailer, and they were kind of out by me shooting. And Lucy called her up and said, listen, we've been shooting the Long Long Trailer. We're going to go right by your house. Can we stop by? So, of course, my mother said, sure. So my mother says to me, Lucy and Desi Arnaz are coming over. Well, I had so many people that came in and out of that house. I went, okay, all right, great, fine, wonderful. So Lucy and Desi come over to the house, and my father's there, my mother's there, and Lucy said, oh, why don't we do this scene from the movie, whatever it was. So they performed in our living room. And I said, oh, that's nice. Okay, I'm sitting in a chair and whatever. And after they left, my mother turned to me and she said, well, what do you think of that? And I said, she got so mad at me because I didn't freak out that Lucy and Desi were there. She goes, we just had Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz here. Doesn't that mean anything to you? She's going, come on.
Right.
And I went, yeah, okay. And then at one point, my mother had to go somewhere, and she and Lucy were talking. And Lucy said, well, I got to she referred to Lucy Arnaz as little Lucy.
Right.
And Lucy's mother was with her. And she said, well, I'm going to take her to Marineland today. So my mother dropped me off at Marineland. She said, I'll be back. I got this appointment, this one thing, but I'll come back. And Lucy goes, okay, fine. I'll take care of her. So Lucy Arnaz and Lucy's mother and little Lucy, who was in a stroller, I think at that time, we did Marineland. And the thing about Lucy being so much a part of our family, Lucy referred to my mother a lot. A lot of people don't know that, but Lucy called up one day and said, they've asked me to teach a class on comedy at UCLA. And she said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. So she said, can you come down and help me? So my mother went down to UCLA, and Lucy and my mother taught this class at UCLA. Nobody knows that. It just happened.
Right.
And Lucy would call her up occasionally and say, I got to do this bit in the show. I'm not quite sure how to do it. And she would talk it over with my mother. They were really close. And then, of course, later years, Lucy would call the house. Lucy was always looking for somebody to play backgammon with. She was very into backgammon.
Yes.
And I actually got on the phone with her one day, and she said, Noopy, do you think you can come down and come over to the house and play backgammon? Well, I was going to college at the time, and I said, I would love, and now I'm sorry I didn't do it. I really am.
Yeah.
But she loved the game of was looking for anybody to play backgammon.
And she turned to your mother, I'm sure, for these comedic tips, because your mother, being so effortlessly and inherently funny and witty, and Lucille Ball was trained in a way where maybe funny didn't come immediately for her, but when she would play funny, she was brilliant. But she was very serious, but yet when she was doing I Love Lucy and all the other incarnations of her series, she was brilliantly funny, but not necessarily throughout the day.
Absolutely.
Where your mother Yeah. Now, your mother, of course, for you, she's Rosemary, she's Sally Rogers, she's all these wonderful things to everybody else. But for you, it's mom.
That's true.
And right. So you still had to, make your bed and eat your peas and
Yeah. Well,
all.
when she was home, it's family. The
Yes.
one thing is work, and then the other is family. And coming from an Italian background, family becomes, that's it. At 6 o'clock, you sit down, you have dinner with the family. Oh, there they are, both of my grandmothers. That's my mother's mother on the right-hand side, and that's my father's mother. And so that's Grammy is on the left and Grandma on the right. That's how I called them.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, they were Grammy, because my mother was working a lot. Grammy really took care of me.
Yeah.
As a baby. But
Look at that, huh?
oh my God, look at
Cutie
that.
patootie there.
Burger baby, if I ever saw one, right?
Yes, right? But very proud, doting. Yeah, you can see the joy.
Well, the funny thing is, when she opened Vegas, she was actually pregnant with me. And Virginia Hill, well, Bugsy Siegel opened up the Flamingo Hotel, and she was actually pregnant with me. And Virginia Hill had said to her, you might think about losing a little bit of weight for some of those gowns. And my mother said, well, I'm pregnant. So that's how that worked. And so she went, oh, she said, well, I'm going to Paris. And mother, and so she said, well, do you think you can get me a christening dress and so my christening dress came from Paris, and Virginia Hill bought it.
Really?
Which, yeah, is quite something.
That really is. That's amazing.
I mean, I didn't know that, of course, until way later, but yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Is with Maury, yeah.
That's her and Maury, and that's my uncle's wife. That's my aunt. And there I am. Oh my God, there I am. My father was raising boxers. He loved to raise boxers, but I probably was Noopy at that point.
Yes, tell us. Like everybody, he gave everybody like a nickname, right?
He did. A friend of theirs had a boat. He called him Skipper. He never called him by his real name. And he was loved by so many people. And of course, in the early years, before my mother started to do television, most of the people that came over to the house were musicians. So we had musician friends. Then when television started to evolve, then the television people like Betty White and Alan Ludden and then of course Squares. And at that time, dinner parties were very popular. I don't think that they do that as much anymore here.
No, they don't.
Dinner parties were everybody always had a dinner party. It was like, okay, who's got one this Saturday night? Who's got one this Saturday night?
That's right.
And my parents had some great parties. Oh my God. That's her best friend, Ruthie, who she had met in Boston, and they became their very best friends. Ruthie is very prominent in her documentary because Ruthie knew where all the bodies were buried. Right. And they truly loved each other forever. They really did. Closest friends ever.
That's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful.
So we have some great pictures. My goodness. How did you get all these wonderful pictures?
I tell you.
This is great. This is like a march through time here as I'm watching.
Ralph Edwards, This Is Your Life.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's no, that's not Ralph Edwards. That is, and I'm blank. But he was another game show host.
Yes.
I'm blank on him. Somebody in your audience will definitely know.
Yes.
Lord, that's terrible.
You're thinking about it, right?
I wish I had my mother's memory at this point, because we could show her pictures of anybody and she knew their names practically when they were born. And
so Ralph Edwards, yeah, he also did Truth or Consequences, and he was the creator and producer of This Is Your Life. Yeah.
That is correct. And
Ralph Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, I think my mother did a couple of This Is Your Life. She of course did Dick.
Yes.
And I think she did somebody else. It was a very funny story about This Is Your Life, because they had asked her to do This Is Your Life. And I want to say it was for like a Western Star at the time. And she thought in her mind that it was going to be her. And my father and I kept trying to tell her, it's not you. It's so-and-so. And she'd go, I know you're trying not to let me know. And we it took, no, they're going to get me down there. She had the whole thing planned out that they're going to get me down there and they're going to do this. And it turned out, no, it was for this cowboy star. And
she had her hair done that day, huh?
Yeah, I mean, she thought for sure it was going to be her. And then, of course, when they did Dick Van Dyke, she knew it was going to be Dick Van Dyke. But yeah, it was. And my father has a tray. Somehow, Ralph Edwards gave him a tray that had the This Is Your Life logo on it. And it's like a little tray and a gold thing that says This Is Your Life.
Wow.
So Ralph Edwards gave him that, and I have it. It's here. But
that's amazing.
Strange, strange how things are popping into my head.
As you go along,
you're showing me all these pictures, and my brain's going,
and it's firing on all cylinders. When she was in all these iconic shows, of course, Dick Van Dyke, Bob Cummings, and then she did a lot of guest star appearances on other shows, Murphy Brown and Love Boat, and so many others. Was she still singing too, or did she put the singing part to the side a little bit?
During all the sitcom stuff, she actually put it aside. Although during Dick Van Dyke, she had told Carl, she said, look, you've got Maury and me, use us. She really pushed to have the performing done in that show, because the only other show that was really doing that was, again, Lucy's show.
Right.
So she said, you've got us here. Utilize us. Don't have us sitting in a chair in the office all the time. Utilize us. You've got talented people here. Use them. And Carl said, you're right. And so that's how the performing aspect, and they even did it in the pilot, because she said, if you're going to do this pilot, then she said, then have us perform. My mother loved to be in charge. Trust me. She absolutely loved it. And so that's why in the pilot that you see everybody perform, because you now know that these are talented people. And after that, it became a part of the series that they always performed, whether it was in the prison for the one thing with Rickles, or it was something else. Anytime that they could figure out a time that they could have them perform, they did. And every time she'd sing, her fan base would go nuts. And really, so during the whole sitcom thing, she really didn't sing that much. The singing was done on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then after that, but she's not going to sing with Caroline in the City and all of that. So when those started to kind of wane down, her manager at the time came up with the idea of doing 4 Girls 4, because he had these clients that were wonderful singers, but weren't really working all that much. the trend of music had started to kind of change. And so he said, why don't we take 4 good singers? And my mother did the singing / comedic part of it. And let's put them on the road. Well, they opened up here locally in the theater, and the people went nuts. And then it became, well, they started to get booked in all these theaters. And I actually produced a segment for CBS on the 4 girls and went on the road. And I was blown away. These are not little theaters. These are huge theaters.
Major, right.
And they're sold out. So then it became, again, my mother in charge. Well, we got to get a road manager because, first of all, these women had 8 tons of luggage.
Yeah.
And then they had to keep their piano player on. And then they wound up getting a drummer, which also joined the group. And so they got a road manager who was fabulous. And I went on the road, and I can't tell you, because I thought, are you kidding me? And they're going, oh, we're sold out. We're sold out. We're sold out. And I mean, they never got a bad review. How can you say that they were bad? You've got wonderful singers, and Margaret Whiting would come out first, and then Helen O'Connell. Then there would be a break. Then my mother would open up the last part of it, and she would do some of her singing, like some of the old things that she had in her act way back when. And then Rosemary Clooney would come out and ended up. And then she said, well, when they were doing this, my mother said, well, we have to have a finale. We have to have a finale. So she organized the finale, of course, and the 4 of them would come out, and the people, Jim, I can't tell you. It's, I was very skeptical, I'll be honest, because I'm going, come on, this isn't going to, please. And they'd go, no, we're sold. Matinees, this, that, and the other, just full theaters in the round everywhere. It just these huge theaters. And okay, so, and the fact that it was such a resurgence for them, they all loved it. So my mother could get her singing back in there, but she had a lot of comedy. She worked so much off the cuff. She would pick out some guy in the audience. Okay, what's your name? She'd go to the front. And the guy would go, Bob. And he'd go, and she would always say, is that 1 O or 2? And
she's the one who started that. You know why?
Why?
You'll laugh because sometimes, like, I'll talk to customer service or whoever it is I'm calling, and your mother would appreciate this. And I'll say the last name Masters, which is our family name, real. And how do you spell Masters? I'm like, how do you spell it? Masters, like the golf tournament or the college degree. And they'll go, oh, Masters. Right. The new one now is, I'll say on the phone to customer service, whoever it is we're calling, Jim Masters. And they'll go, is that with 1 M or 2? So your mother must have started that. Yes, that's what they say. You said 1 M or 2.
She would pick a guy out in the audience, and I'm telling you, she just went off the cuff. And there was one night that she didn't want to get off. I'll clue you. And I was backstage watching her one night, taking her bow, and it really hit me that she really loved this. You could see it in her face and her eyes. And it was like somebody that took a drug and it was really something to see.
She was one of the most prolific entertainers, workers in the industry. Your mother had her hands in all aspects of the industry and was always busy and liked to keep busy. And be plugged in, right? That gave her energy and it fired off all her cylinders.
Well,
She's
she never stopped.
incredible.
She didn't
Never
want to stop.
kept going.
Only that short time after my father passed away was a terribly rough time for her. But then she got back in it because, one, she was a single mother. She had to support me, and that I was going to college, me and the house and everything else. But the fact that she loved it so much.
Yeah.
Till the day that she passed away, she loved every minute of it and lived for it. I think if it were up to her, she would have lived to be 120 as long as she could keep performing.
Yes.
She really
absolutely.
did. She really loved it.
Here's a cool photo of her in a look that people might not be familiar with. Do you recall what this was from?
Remington Steele.
Oh, yes. That's
She did a Remington Steele, and that was, they had her with the hat and everything else because she was supposed to be a celebrity hiding out.
That's it. Look at this shot.
God, and that's a real young, oh God, Jaws, help me.
Richard Dreyfuss?
Richard Dreyfuss.
Yes. Yeah. Look at
That's
that.
a real young Richard Dreyfuss. I have no idea what that's from.
And of course, The Love Boat, Aaron Spelling.
Yes. Whenever
Caesar's in her arms.
Yes. Whenever she wasn't working, she would call up Aaron Spelling. This is the truth. She would call up Aaron Spelling saying, Aaron, I'm not working next week. And he'd go, okay, hold on. And he'd go and goes, all right, I got you in a Love Boat next week. I'm not kidding.
That's it.
I saw it and I heard it.
You know, and many other shows and specials, but that run with Hollywood Squares, huh?
Oh.
Very, very special.
Peter is still a part of our family. Peter
bless him, huh?
narrates her film. And he is, God, I've known Peter forever. And she loved Hollywood Squares. Again, it was after my father passed away. And she wasn't sure if she could do anything. And they called her for Hollywood Squares. And they said, well, you're going to sit in the thing. And she goes, okay, I think I can do that. As long as I don't have to perform. And that's how she got. And then she loved Squares. She got all these famous friends of hers on Squares. She would go in there and say, can we put Ethel Merman on Squares? And they go, Ethel Merman, are you kidding? I said, no, she wants to do Squares. Okay. It was a great time. It was a great time for all of us during the whole Hollywood Squares age. It was fabulous. And they did 5 shows in one day.
Yes, I remember her saying that in a conversation. There was actually one time where she was performing, I believe, in Boston, and she had done 5 one day, and then they did 5 on another day. Right. And I think during that conversation, if I recall, she also said that if one of the things that was a determinant as far as that she recommended women that were looking for a man, was to look at his shoes. And if his shoes were shined and they were polished, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Look at
my
the man's
father
shoes.
Was that. Yeah, my father really was that way. He really was. I used to get mad at him because I had horses, and he had to make sure that his boots look good. And I go, Dad, scuff them up. Come on.
Exactly. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that she was on the Doris Day Show as well, and worked with Doris, and that was
she loved Doris.
Yeah, the two of them, right?
If I could say that she was starstruck, I would say she was starstruck with Doris Day, because she loved how professional Doris was. Doris knew what had to be done and how things had to go, and my mother loved that about her. And they became, up until my mother passed away, I think she talked to Doris 2 days prior to when she passed away. And they would talk all the time. And my mother just adored Doris Day. You can see it in these pictures. You can see her look.
Yeah.
And everything, and she loved the fact that Doris was so good and so professional and knew she wasn't the dumb blonde that everybody thought she was.
Exactly.
And especially when it came to work, to herself and how she should look.
Absolutely.
And she was, they would call each other up and chat like girlfriends.
Yeah.
And Doris would call her up because her character in the show was Myrna. And
Yes.
Doris would call her and go, "Hi, Myrn."
That is funny.
And they would talk, and because my mother was such a good cook, she sent spaghetti sauce up to her once.
Oh boy.
And you don't think that wasn't fun to try to ship that stuff back?
Oh
Holy
my
Toledo.
God.
But we went ahead and did it, and she got the sauce because
That's
mother said,
incredible.
"Well, you have to have my sauce. You got to have my sauce." So she made it and we shipped it, and Doris Day had her sauce.
And of course, Bob Cummings, working with Bob Cummings as well.
Again, another professional. Yeah. Bob Cummings directed most of his shows himself. And she was relatively new in the sitcom part of that time. And she learned so much from Bob Cummings. She admired the heck out of him. And she and Ann B. Davis became really good friends. Anybody that she ever worked with that they really got along, I'll tell you, they were a part of her friendship, and they were at the house at one point, whether it was for a dinner party or whatever. Betty White, we became very, very close with. And as a matter of fact, I did 2 of her pet sets.
And you did?
I did, because I did one with my mother and Scruffy, that dog right there. And then Betty came back, and Betty came out to the place where I had my horses, and Betty actually rode my horse.
Wow.
And so we had videotape of that. And then she said, "All right, you're going to be my horse expert." I said, "Okay." So I did a pet set. I did 2 of them, and it was great. They were just both her and Alan Ludden, terrific people, absolutely terrific people, wonderful people. And I loved about Betty was that she was genuine. It was not a bunch of baloney.
She was the real deal.
And right? She loved animals, and she really did. It wasn't I'm going to say I'm an animal lover, but whatever. She actually did. She was the only one that could pick up my cat and not get killed. So, but
couple more shots.
They were great.
They were close. Look at Tim Conway, Cesar Romero, and that one.
My mother discovered Tim Conway.
That's right.
That is another story.
Yes, and then Tim Conway brought Ernie Anderson to L.A., who became the voice of the ABC TV network.
Correct.
Yes.
Actually, my mother was on a junket to promote Dick Van Dyke at the time. This was just starting out, and she was in Cleveland, and
that's where she
was doing a spot in Cleveland, and this voice came over the essay making cracks and stuff like that, and she said, "Who the heck is that?"
Right.
And they said, "Oh, it's this guy in the booth,
Yeah.
So she stopped. She says, "He's really funny." So she said, have him come down here. So Tim came down. Actually, his real name at the time was Tom, but there was an actor that had the same name. So Tom had to change his name to Tim. And but he came down, and they started talking, and she said, "You're really funny." And I guess he gave her some tapes of some of the things that he had done. And so she called him up, and when she came home, she called up Steve Allen, and she said, "I found this guy in Cleveland, and he's really funny." And she says, "I think you ought to get him on your show." So Steve said, "Okay." Steve Allen used to be at the house too. He used to come over while everybody was partying. He's over at the piano playing around. But anyway, so they flew Tim out, and Tim became popular on Steve Allen. And then after that, she managed him for a short while until he got McHale's Navy, and then she turned him over to a professional management thing. She said, I'm not prepared for this. So anyway, that's how that happened. But she actually was the one to get him on Steve Allen, and he moved out here, and that's when his partner also moved out here.
That's amazing, isn't it? And then, of
It's
course,
it's an amazing story, but it's
Carol Burnett
absolutely
came
true.
calling, and the rest is history.
Mhm.
Ah, look at that
Oh,
shot we
look at
dug
me.
out. Wow.
Oh, there I am.
Isn't that cute?
The funny thing about the Christmas cookies, my parents always made Christmas cookies, and I would leave them out for Santa. And I would say, wow, that's really great. And the next
Yeah.
day the cookies would be gone, but there were cookie crumbs in the
There were
milk because I always
crumbs.
left a thing of milk. And I said, oh, Santa dunks his cookies just like my dad does.
Just like my dad.
So I said, well, that's
How did that
great.
happen?
That's great.
So there was with your mother being so busy, she still was able to find ways to create a home and warmth and a place for you that was loving and secure, which isn't always the case in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's very true because, I used to hear the stories of these kids of celebrities that wind up on drugs and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I was raised very strict. My father was strict. And I think that helped, to be honest. And I think the horses helped a great deal because you don't have time to get into trouble when you're worried about, I got to go show the horse or I got to ride the horse today. So you don't think about that. But there is a stigma, I guess, with being the child of a celebrity. Somebody asked me about that the other day, and I said, the problem with that is that you're not quite sure if these people want to be your friends because they want to be your friends of who you are, or they're doing it because of who your parent is.
Right.
And that's what happens. So consequently, you get some of them that say, I don't want to talk about my mother, or I don't want to talk about how famous my father is, and I think that becomes a problem because they're very insecure because they don't know who their true friends are. But I've been very lucky. I have friends that go back, 50 years. And nobody looks at me as, okay, you're Rosemary's daughter, and that's why I'm hanging out with you. I mean, it's a different aspect. And I think it helps the way you're raised too.
Exactly. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really do. I think that I think that makes it some of these celebrities that don't have the time for their kids or don't have the time for the family or whatever, and they kind of leave the kid on their own. And I had a very strict family, and if I acted like a jerk, boy, I was punished for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But looking back on it now, I go, yeah, they were right. They were right. They were right to do what they did. And
which is beautiful.
My father loved cars. He's very into cars, by the way. But that's a great shot. Yeah. I haven't seen that. Boy, I don't know where you got these pictures, but they're fabulous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
These are all.
I'm sure your audience is, and
they're going wild
it as much as I am.
You mentioned the clippings too. Yeah, there she is.
There you go. One of the clippings that we have on the CD was from a paper that we just found recently, that from George Gershwin, who said
she loved, right?
She loved Gershwin music. She loved Concerto in F, his concerto.
I think there was a quote said, right? Yeah.
He had a quote in one of the papers that we just found recently, going through some of this stuff. I mean, we're still going through it. Lord, we're still going through it. but he made the statement that that one of the best singers and the best person that had rhythm was baby Rosemary. And that came out of George Gershwin's mouth. And I looked at that and I went, oh my God. I mean, truly, this was like a month ago we found this, maybe more, but it's been this year. So
amazing to hear that.
That's quite something, really. To
Yes.
have George Gershwin say that there's only a few people that have true rhythm, and one of them is baby Rosemary.
Isn't that amazing?
Again, oh, there she is. Yeah, NBC. That's the Mercury album. Yeah, it's great. These are great.
You're having a nice time, right? I should have come
like
over with a cup of coffee, and we could have, right? She also, of course, maintained a wonderful friendship with another icon, Dick Van Dyke.
Oh yeah. Dick, in the movie she calls him blood and guts, because Dick never got upset, mad, anything. If they said, Dick, go over there and stand on your head, that'd be great. And you go, okay. You go and do it. Or somebody would say, and she always said about Dick, she said, he's got more talent than he knows what he has.
Than he knows, right.
She used to say that because somebody said, it'd be kind of funny if you could juggle in the office one day. And he'd go, I can do that. You can juggle? Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Well, then we'll put it in. So much of those office scenes were just done. I mean, I don't want to say that they were done off the cuff, because they weren't, but they were written. But it was rehearsals. It was, well, it'd be great if you could do this. What do you think about this? Or Maury'd say, I think Dick ought to say this, or I think Rosie ought to say this. And Carl would go, oh, that's great. Put it in. Maury's whole thing with Mel is Maury writing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yes, right, exactly.
And I'm telling you, my husband adored Maury Amsterdam, and I mean, Maury could come in and say hello, and my husband would be on the floor laughing. I mean, it's just one of those
just
things.
In the way, his delivery.
He was, and never a bad word, never, the sweetest man in the world. I never heard him get mad, upset, nothing. And that's never heard him say, no, there's, never. It was just, he loved everybody. He loved doing what he did. Sweet, never said a bad word, never cussed, never said any. I mean, truly an amazing human being.
Absolutely. Here's another great shot with Jonathan Winters and the ladies. There you go.
Jonathan Winters. Oh, we had a dinner party with him one night, and I think everybody walked out of here with, exhausted from laughing.
Just from the laughing.
It was, because he would, you'd feed him one thing and he'd just go off. I mean, his brain was amazing.
Did you realize all this, growing up? Did you realize the
not when when I was going to school, not so much, but after my father died, I think I started to, because of course my father was ill. He had a rare blood disorder, which they still don't know what caused it to this day. And they sent his blood all over the world trying to find out what was happening with him. And they thought maybe he had gotten something in the service, or got exposed to something in the service that somehow reacted to his blood. But so he was sick a year. I mean, they tried to get him out of the hospital. He was in the hospital, and he wasn't getting any better. My mother didn't like the doctors, and she went to Maury, and she said, I don't like these doctors. What do I do? And Maury said, call up Jerry Lewis. He knows every doctor in the world.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. And my father, Jerry Lewis, loved my father because Jerry loved musicians and music. If you ever look at his films, you'll always see Count Basie in there, or whatever. But my father is on every Jerry Lewis music track, Jerry Lewis movie. And they became friends, my father and Jerry. And again, just like I said, everybody helps everybody. They really do. And
Exactly.
so my mother called up Jerry, and Jerry said, all right, in 5 minutes, a Dr. Marvin Levy's going to call you from Cedars-Sinai. And she went, okay. And this 5 minutes, that doctor called, and they transferred him out of the hospital he was in over to Cedars. And Dr. Levy took over the case. He was a big mucky muck at Cedars at the time. And so they were trying to figure out what this thing was. What a lot of people don't know is that Jerry Lewis used to come after hours and see my father and crack jokes and make him laugh and stuff like that. Nobody knows that, but Jerry used to do it. And my father would say, you know, Jerry was in last night. And it was, he was quite something. A lot of people had negative things to say about Jerry Lewis over the years, but he was a perfectionist, God knows. But boy, was he loyal. And my mother, till the day she passed away, referred to Jerry as her angel.
Why do you think people, even today, have this wonderful affection for your mother, Rosemary, and they can't get enough? And of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show being on, everybody loves all of the, you know, the characters from the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that keeps, you know, the impressions out there and keeps the conversation out there with all of them. I mean, just incredible. And of course, we just lost not that long ago Mary Tyler Moore, and of course Carl Reiner. I remember the line that Carl used to say. He said he would get up every morning and take a look at the obituaries, and if he wasn't in it, he would have breakfast.
He would get up, yeah.
He'd have breakfast then. And Maury, and of course Larry Matthews, who was on our show recently.
Yeah, Larry's a good friend. Larry comes from a good Italian family.
And he had nothing but beautiful things to say about your mom, Rosemary, and just the whole experience of being on the Dick Van Dyke Show, especially as a kid. And of course, he's had his own wonderful career and other things that he's done outside of entertainment as well. What do you think it is about your mom that just touches a certain place in people's hearts? I think one of the things I'll just throw in quickly is not only the humor and the quick wit and being able to respond to things quickly and all of that, and her incredible singing voice and all the rest, a tremendous show person, an entertainer that did it all, like a Sammy Davis Jr., just did it all. It's the realism, the authenticity. You felt a connection, a relatability to her because you knew she was being herself. She, no matter what, even with the characters that she took on, there were elements of who she was that came through, and you felt this authenticity in everything that she did, which people resonate with and connect with, I think. What are some other things that you feel as well?
I feel that a lot of women, which I have found, a lot of famous women too, for that matter, related to her because she was real. She was working as her character, and she was an independent woman. She wasn't by the stove wearing a dress with an apron. And I think this was a revelation to a lot of women that, wow, this is different. She is different. She's real. She still wants to get a guy, but she's out there and she's working and she's funny. And it gave her a personality that I think people really wanted to relate to and wanted to become. I think that because of that character, I mean, we found this out after the film, but people like Jane Lynch mentions her in her act, I guess. We found this out later. Marta Kaufman, who executive produced Friends and wrote Friends, said, if it wasn't for that character, Sally Rogers, I would not have become a writer.
It's incredible.
And Paula Poundstone, huge fan.
Oh, she was just a guest 2 weeks ago on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, Paula and a long time ago, Mother and I were at a function and came out, and we were going to get in the car to leave, and they had the barricades up. I forget, it was at the Century Plaza. It was some function. It came out, and I look over and I said, God, it's Paula Poundstone over there behind the barricade. And she was holding something. Somehow she got a hold of a Dick Van Dyke script, Dick Van Dyke Show script. I don't know how she did it or anything. And so she's like waving to us to try to come over. And so I said to my mother, I said, that's Paula Poundstone. You got to go over to her. So she walked over, and Paula Poundstone was so excited to meet my mother. She had her sign the script, which my mother, by the way, never refused an autograph, ever. I've seen other people do it. I've never in my lifetime. I have seen her eating and have the fork up to here, and somebody say, can you sign? Well, see, there you go. You found that picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And I literally, especially when they were on the road and they were in a restaurant, they'd come up and they right in the middle, and yeah, I'll sign it. She'd sign it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Or a lot of times people come up, can you sign this? And my mother would say, do you have a pen?
They forgot the pen part, right?
It's true. But I think because of that character, and as strong as that character was, this was not, a wussy character. This was somebody that was in the business, a tough business, competing, working on a show, making the same salary as the two other guys are making, but still wanting to get a guy and still wanting to be human that way. But I think the people admired that. And then as the show continued, her popularity because of that character, just burst, because there was nothing like that on there. Even Lucy, there was nobody that had the independence. She went home, she had a cat, but she could still keep up with every one of the guys. And I think that was the main, and that to the brilliance really of Carl, and putting a female writer in there when it was mostly male writers. There were never really that many female writers, but it happened all the time of people like Marta Kaufman saying, if it hadn't been for your mother, I wouldn't have become a writer. I just talked with somebody the other day, and they said that their executive producer admired your mother so much that they knew that they could become a writer, and she was a female. So I think that's the part of it. And even if it gives you, it's tough, but when somebody sees that character, they love it, because boy, that's if I could be that tough, or if I could do that.
And she was human too. The fact that
she, there's one thing where the guy stood her up for her birthday, or she thought it was.
Yes.
And she has that scene where she really breaks down. And Dick gives her that look, which she said, the minute Dick gave me that look, I was gone. And she herself, of course, had gone through tragedy in her lifetime. I don't think there's a comic out there that didn't go through some sort of tragedy. I'll be honest.
A lot of
I
comedy
can't.
comes from tragedy.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that, but her character was so good. But now, so many people. I think she did 3 or 4 monkeys.
That's right. Yes.
And that's a whole different fan base because she became
It's like the monkey mom.
mother. And I was told, and again, I was going to school and she was doing the monkeys and everybody's going, oh God, it's the monkeys. Oh.
Yes.
And I went, yeah, okay, it's the monkeys. All right. When she's working, But I guess when they did their last tour, they were filling these huge areas. And there's a song associated with her on the monkeys. And they started to sing that song and they put a picture of her up on the video screens around the thing. And I guess the audience went nuts. So that's a whole other group of fans.
She
that are
touched
out
so
there.
many lives.
And
so
a very
many
loyal,
lives.
trust me, a very loyal group of fans are the monkey fans. They really are.
Yes.
And they're great. Is
there anything do you think that she never did that she wished she did? Did she ever mention anything? Because she did so
she
many
wanted
things.
Gypsy. She
She
wanted to do the show Gypsy because, of course, having been friends with Ethel, but she loved that show. She thought she could kill in that show.
Yeah.
And she always wanted to do it. They called her in. Rosalind Russell wound up doing the film, and they called her in because the geniuses at the studio wanted to dub Rosalind Russell's voice. Rosalind Russell can sing, but so they brought in my mother because she had kind of a grovelly voice, and she sang 2 songs, which are on the CD, by the way, which we found, amazingly enough, and she recorded 2 songs from Gypsy, and they didn't use her. They used somebody else, but I would have to say the one thing that she always wanted to do that show because she loved the music. She knew she could play that part. She saw Ethel do it and just went nuts. And so, yeah, I would say if there was one thing that she didn't do that she would have loved to have done would be the show Gypsy.
Tell us about the CD, and congratulations. This is super fans. Everyone's been waiting for this, and you've discovered some gems.
I'll tell you something. This, we had transferred a lot of it during the filming of the documentary because we weren't quite sure what we were going to use. And like I said, it took us 3 years to do this documentary. And so we had some of the stuff, but we put it aside because of the film. The film became, but now we started to delve into all of this. And Kathy Brown, who was my mother's assistant and now helps me, Kathy said, we're going to get these out because she said the fans are screaming for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say 90% of them I haven't heard. I had no idea because of my mother's Italian background. There's a lot of Italian songs in there, a lot of which she wrote.
Yeah, I was going to say, she did that. She composed music.
She wrote that, and because she was such great friends with Jimmy Durante, there's a song on there called Chittabee, Chittabee. I guarantee you, if you play it, you will never get it out of your head.
Yeah.
You will die listening to that song. And because the first time I heard it, I said, "Oh, that's cute." And it was written by Jimmy Durante. And I found myself later on in the day hearing that song. It just, it's just in your head.
Yeah.
But some of the Italian songs in the vein of, Come On to My House during that era, a lot of singers sang those songs. And she loved to sing. In listening to the songs, I have to say that some of the serious songs are just beautifully sung. I mean, it blew me out of the water.
Yeah.
And she had such a great tone. I mean, even some of the Dick Van Dyke Show songs, like Cotton Fields and stuff like that. I think there's 2 or 3 cuts from the songs that she did on Dick Van Dyke. So the fans have already said, "Are you going to have Cotton Fields on there? Are you going to have,
They're putting their orders in already."
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. It's amazing.
That's incredible.
There are songs on there that one of which blew me away is One for My Baby, which she sang in the 50s, which was Frank Sinatra called it a, quote, saloon song. And Frank did it in his act Forever. Yes. But I'd never heard a woman sing it, because you didn't hear a woman in the 50s singing It's 2:45, there's no one in the place except you and me.
Right.
And I heard that and I said, she sang that? And I said, in the 50s? I mean, women didn't sing that song. Trust me.
Right, exactly.
They really didn't.
No.
And that was and is, and she sings the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And I went, wow. I mean, that kind of blew me out of the water. And of course there's the one that's probably the hardest one for me to listen to. She was in her depression after my father passed away, and she literally didn't want to leave the house except to go to work at Dick Van Dyke. But again, just like the showbiz community that it is, and the fact that she'd worked these clubs, and Dean, Frank, Sammy, all of those kinds of guys, Jerry Lewis, Dean called her up one day and said, I want you to do my show. Dean was doing the show on NBC at the time. And he said, I want you to come on and sing, because they all knew her as a singer too. And she said, Dean, I don't think I can do it. I can't sing. No. Come on, you watch on my show. You got to do this. I'm stuck. I got to do it. Whatever the heck he said in order to get her on. He tried everything. And he said, you can pick out the song. You can do whatever. And I said, okay. And so she picked out Little Girl Blue. And he said, and she said, I'm going to do Little Girl. She never sung it before. Never did it afterwards, ever. And she said, and he said, I'll sit there with you. And I think somewhere on YouTube or something might be a video of that, but she did it in one take.
Incredible.
And she sang Little Girl Blue, and Dean is right there with her.
Right there with her.
And that version of Little Girl Blue is on the CD. And when I heard it, the tears just streamed down my face.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I have to say that in the film, when we had the screenings of the film and my father had passed away, women were crying their eyes out in the theater, just crying their eyes out, because the film also has a heck of a love story, besides all the other stuff.
All the rest.
Yeah.
This is all tying in so beautifully to the centennial, and there's this opportunity to actually see this on YouTube as well. Tell us about this whole thing that's happening. It's exciting.
Well, again, this is Kathy's project. We were trying to come up with something that we could do. And originally we were going to try to do it at the Comedy Center and all of that. But we basically decided that having it as a virtual thing for everybody to see would be the way to go. Again, we're dealing with her fans here. And,
and they can't get enough, right? Exactly.
Her fans just, so they're all excited, and we're going to be showing, naturally, we're going to be playing some songs from the CD, but we also have some film, because my mother loved to take 8mm film. And so we've got a lot of home movies and stuff like that a lot of the fans haven't seen.
Yes.
We asked the fans what they wanted to see on this, and so many of them want to see her as baby Rosemary.
Isn't that amazing?
I was surprised at that. I have to be honest. And they said, can you show us more of her singing as baby Rosemary? So the fans are really clamoring for those early years of her singing as a child. They all know Dick Van Dyke. They all know that. I mean, they've all been through the realm of that.
And all of that.
And there were 2 or 3 that said, watched her on SWAT. She did 5 SWATs.
That's right.
And she was the lunch lady, and she'd come down, and it would be like a really tough show. And then here comes your mom down the stairs with the lunch wagon, and and we loved her on SWAT. Somebody just told me the other day, I saw her on Adam 12.
Oh, yes.
Saw her on, so she did a barrage of sitcoms.
Yeah.
And I truly, when I look at the residuals, 2 cents, 8 cents, 12 cents, whatever, but her resume goes on for pages.
It's incredible
what she did.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and of course, the Monkees fans want to see something from when she was on the Monkees. That's a whole group. But I would say the majority of the quote unquote really loyal fans to her that are want to see her as baby Rosemary. They want to see more of that.
Right, because they know her from the later years and all these iconic shows and specials and
that really surprised me. Really did.
The child, right, which is quite amazing, huh?
I thought they would mention some of the sitcoms that she did or something like that, or whatever. But no, they want to see her as baby Rosemary, and the fact that she did a movie as baby Rosemary, the big broadcast, I think of 1939 or 30, whatever it is, with W.C. Fields. And they love the fact that she worked with W.C. Fields. Some of the comments to me are unbelievable, that there are people out there that just really, I would love to see her when she sang on the piano, when she was baby Rosemary. I want to see her when she sang My Bluebird Singing the Blues. It's amazing. Oh, some of them look, we've got people.
Yeah. Hi, Georgiana.
Isn't that
Longtime
great?
fan of your beloved
Thank
mother.
You.
Welcome to Lovity Hall. These are Lovitys watching the Jim Master
These
Show.
are Lovitys. Oh, my goodness.
Georgiana, Kathleen in New York. Loved Rosemary. Still love watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. Maureen in Arizona, welcoming you as well. And Brenda in Pennsylvania, longtime fan of your beloved mother. And,
I so admire the fans. They are so loyal and
cool story. Clearly, Rosemary has owned the stage since age 3. Jen in Pennsylvania says you are now a Jim Master Show Lovitys.
Oh my God, I'm a Lovity now. Okay, fantastic.
Great words from George Mallory, who watches as well, and Toby watching in California, and they've been commenting throughout the show. I'm an interactive host, so we
that's
like to
great.
bring them in.
I had no idea. That's
Jane
terrific.
Watching in Sweden, and Merlin in Canada asks, are you yourself friends with Dick Van Dyke today?
Oh, absolutely. I was
Yes,
best friends. I'm best friends with his daughter.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Which is wonderful. And this is great stuff, people. And of course, another dear friend, David Van Dusen, who of course is one.
Oh, hi,
Yeah,
David.
he's
That's
watching.
great.
He was all excited as well. He has the pre-release of the new CD and says it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. David, boy, talk about a Dick Van Dyke Show fan. He is
He's
the number
really,
one. He
he's
knows
really,
everything and anything there is to know about the Dick Van Dyke Show. And we used him a lot. He was tremendous help with us with the documentary,
right.
and he's always involved with anything about my mother. He's a very talented guy. He's got
He
his
is.
own
He came
thing
on the
too on
show
Facebook if you want to go see what he did. He
celebrating the show, and he
did a
came
whole
on
thing.
as well when we had Larry Matthews on, who played, of course, little Richie on Richie Petrie, and Doug Denoff, who's a friend, who, of course, his dad,
Was a writer.
head writer for the Dick Van Dyke Show, one of the head
Yeah, yeah.
writers. Yeah,
Was a writer.
Sam.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's so many wonderful things coming up, and this must be very. It keeps the memory and appreciation for your mom alive in the hearts and minds of everybody, but it also shows the love a daughter has for her mother, appreciates what her mother did, appreciates how her mother contributed so much to not only American entertainment, but really internationally. And this wonderful way that you're celebrating, continuing to celebrate your mother, because again, she's your mom. She's Rosemary and Sally Rogers and everybody else, but she's your mom. I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And
Thank you, Jim. I
yeah,
appreciate that. Thank
I'm
you for saying
so
that.
glad you are, because you're keeping everybody so plugged in. And we need to do more of that in our world. We're so fast paced and everything
I
is
agree. I agree.
next. And to take some time and appreciate this kind of material, the phenomenal music with the CD, all these iconic shows and specials that she's been a part of. She's left her indelible mark. And you are as well, as you're continuing to share her legacy with all of us, which is a beautiful thing.
Well,
Noopy?
thank you, Jim. That was beautifully said. And I think as long as we can, she should be out there because people enjoy her. And I know that she would love all this. And it's an homage to her and her longevity of being in this business. She went through all phases of it. So, and I think the fact that that there's so many stations out there now that are running these old shows, Cozy TV and all of those
Yes, absolutely.
types of stations. And I'm telling you, I get these, I saw your mother on Adam 12. Like, really?
Exactly right. And she didn't really do, a lot of people brought into commercials a lot. She didn't really do a lot of commercials, but there was one she did for potato chips, right?
Yes, Bell
Yes.
potato chips.
Did you get to have
Yes,
any of those?
absolutely. She loved, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, if
Yeah.
it was work, she'd do it.
She
She
would
would
do
do it, but she also loved it.
I want to let the audience know, as we've been showing throughout the episode of the Jim Masters Show Live. Gang, if this is your first time watching us, thank you for stopping by. Give this episode a like, leave a comment on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, and subscribe to the channel. MissRosemary.com is the website. It's a spectacular website, photos and all kinds of wonderful things that are happening. Also, the YouTube channel as well, Hold the Roses. And of course, Facebook and Twitter, which I believe is now called X. They changed the name.
Yeah, just got changed, I heard.
So all on social media and very interactive and communicative as well, which I think is beautiful. Georgiana, this was a delight. I know we said when the guests come on, if they only have 10 minutes, you don't really get much out of 10 minutes. But
oh
if they have
God, no, I
20
talk
minutes,
forever.
I'm a conversationalist too. So we let it ride. You know, if you have time and you want to spend some time, like I said, it's like Dick Cavett and Carson and Merv and Mike, Steve Allen, you mentioned, conversational, not so much interview-ish. Because I think we're running short on conversations these days. So a good conversation that people can follow along with as they have been. And you've been wonderful.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's what I've wanted to do. And I'm so glad we're doing it. And folks like you popping on and just enhancing it in the way that you've done with all of us is beautiful. I hope the show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoyed the time.
Oh, are you kidding? I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was wonderful. And I thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you. And the fans, I'm sure, appreciate it too.
The pleasure is all mine. And as my father has always said, sage advice from my father, who also hails originally from New York. Grew up in Astoria, a couple blocks from Tony Bennett, my dad. And 7 years old, I was 7, said to me, and still resonates today. And you'll appreciate this. And your mother probably would love this line with his Irish humor. Jim, whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, tell them to please put it in writing and address it management.
That's Irish humor, all right. My father was English Irish, so there you go.
You get the whole. One quick thing before we go, I have to mention about you, and you and I were chatting about this, which I think is something really terrific. You worked with Tom Snyder on the Tomorrow Show on NBC.
I did. I was on the original cast of the Tomorrow Show when it came. It basically started, and everybody thought that we were just gonna, it wasn't gonna last, but it did.
Yes.
And, Tom became an icon for late night talk. Basically,
yes.
We started with nothing. We had no sponsors. We had public service announcements were our commercials.
That's right. PSAs.
And, but it was a learning experience for me. And I really grew up being a part of that show.
I bet your mom was proud too that you entered into the industry in that way.
Yeah, I really developed a love for being behind the camera, producing, editing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that part of it. And somebody would say, well, don't you want to go and go out there? I mean, I can sing okay. I'm not, I certainly don't have her voice, but I at least sing on key. And I only did one show that I actually went on and sang, and that was Dinah Shore when she did a show on teenagers. And again, it was to get my mother out of the house because they had called and she said, well, I'll ask Noopy if she wants to do it. If she doesn't want to do it, then I'm not going to do it. So she asked me and I said, okay, I'll do it. And she looked at me, she went, what? And I said, no, I'll do it. Well, you got to go out of school and you got to go into rehearsal and you got to, had Nick Castle as our choreographer. And we wound up doing this Dinah Shore show and I sang and danced. That was it. But that's the only thing. And I did do Wonderful Town in school. In high school. I did do that. I had the lead in that.
See?
But after that, I decided to work in production, and the guy that started Tom Snyder Tomorrow Show was Rudy Tellez. Rudy Tellez originally started Johnny Carson. Rudy was the original producer before Fred de Cordova. And Rudy had come to me and said, I want you to work on this show. I had no experience on that. And I said, what's it called? He goes, Tomorrow Show. And I went, oh, that's cute. Today, tonight, tomorrow. And so that's how I got the job. And
It's incredible.
It was quite something. Rudy left, and then another producer came on, Joel Tater, and Joel said to me, "I want you to do some segments for the show." And I went, I don't think I want to put a network show on my shoulders right now. And he goes, "Well, you come up with an idea, you go ahead and do it." Well, my first show was based on the children of being a child of a celebrity.
Of a celebrity.
And that's how I did the show. And I had me, Stacey Van Dyke, or I, of course, was not on it. Frank Sinatra Jr., Stacey Van Dyke, Maureen Reagan, and David Carradine.
Wow.
And that was the group. And Tom did the show. And Tom thanked me after the show on air about it. And then I started to do segments after that. And I really got into it. I really enjoyed it. So that's how I got started. And I love being part of the business. I met my husband, who was a director at the local station at NBC. So that's how that marriage got started. And it's still going.
NBC, Los Angeles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, great station. Yeah.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. A lot of people don't know that I actually had a career. But
yes, ever the broadcaster here.
Oh, good job, Jim.
We got you
Good
covered.
job.
You were wonderful to chat with. Absolutely. I love this. I hate for it to wrap, and I appreciate all the time. Like I said, we just let it roll. If a guest only has a half hour, we do that. If they have an hour, we do that. But we just let it roll. The viewers have been loving it, and everybody, who isn't with us now live can see this archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV.
Great. That's fantastic.
Congratulations on everything. Thanks for sharing and being so open and loving and real with all of us, sharing these wonderful memories of your mom, a little bit about your incredible background as well, your dad, and all the players and people in your life.
Yeah, that's quite a life, isn't it? Now that
really,
I'm looking at it.
It's incredible. And some fabulous things happening with the new music that is being released, new to all of us.
It's really good.
As we celebrate happy 100th to Rosemary, to your mom. It's incredible, huh? Slice up the cake. Georgiana, thank you very much. And I hope we chat again real soon. Spread the word about our show, and we would love to welcome you back.
We already put it on the webpage, so we'll do it again for those that want to see it, because reach out to all those folk.
Absolutely. It takes a village, right?
It does take a village. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much for all your time. Congratulations on all, and take care and be well.
Thanks, Jim. You too.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
She not amazing? What a spectacular conversation with Georgiana Noopy Guy Rodrigues. That is the daughter of the icon, television legend, singer, actress extraordinaire, the one and only Rosemary. Isn't it nice you got a chance to have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about this legendary figure, about Rosemary, her life, not only as Sally Rogers, which most people know her as from the beloved and iconic series, The Dick Van Dyke Show, but her earlier career, where she was a child star at age 3, had her own show, a radio show at 5. And people can't get enough of that, as well, as Georgiana was saying. They want more and more and more of Rosemary when she was a kid. And I think that's beautiful. But just in this very elaborate way, she's celebrating her mom. She really appreciates as well the love that people have for her mother. And at the same time, that's her mother. And she was a loving mother to her, and they had this wonderful relationship. And that's a beautiful love story unto itself, that a lot of times when you have a parent that's out there hustling and doing it and making it happen, all the attention goes just on the parent, and sometimes the child feels left behind or stepping back, and there's probably times where that happens, but you could see the love that she has for her mom and her dad and what it's all about. And she said it was a very traditional, strict upbringing. And that, I think, was a plus for her because, in the world of entertainment and Hollywood and all, there's a lot of different ways you can go. But Rosemary, and at that time, her husband, Bobby Guy, made sure that their daughter got what was needed and instilled some wonderful ethics and morals about life and being good to people, being kind, having a laugh or two, and sharing it with the world. I think that was fantastic, really. Just want to see a couple of comments here. If you missed anything, you can see it again here on our YouTube channel. Maureen in Arizona says, what a wonderful tribute to an amazing lady. I love the photos and the stories to go along with them. Thank you so much for being with us today. Noopy, God bless. And her dad had nicknames for everybody, and that was the nickname that stuck, which I think is cute. I said, you can call me James, Jim, or Jimmy. Just don't call me late for supper. Kathleen in New York City. Thanks so much for being here, Georgiana. Loved hearing stories of your mom. Gang, thanks for all these great comments and all the interactivity as well. We really appreciate it all. If you missed any of this, as we celebrated the iconic Rosemary, as well as her daughter, well, you can see it again on our YouTube channel. We're also going to make mention that she does have the website, Rosemary, Miss Rosemary, Miss, as she was called when she was a child, baby Rosemary. The website is missrosemary.com. And also, in addition to that, check out, be sure and get, as they make it available, that phenomenal CD, which is going to be something really, really special. And if you're watching this, a year from now, this will have already been out. But it's a lot of material that was not previously released. And they've been working hard on this. You can go to missrosemary.com. And of course, it's going to be on Amazon and everywhere else where you get your music. And as we're saying happy birthday to Rosemary, even though she's not with us anymore, no longer with us, happy birthday in heaven, or the Rosemary Centennial. That's going to be on YouTube, youtube.com/Hold the Roses. Now you know where that Hold the Roses came from. They're going to be kicking off Rosemary's Centennial celebration with a virtual party and screening of Rosemary Rarities. You see the date and time there on the screen. It also begins their 100 days of Rosemary facts to be posted on social media. One of the icons, one of my favorites in television and in entertainment, Rosemary, as lovingly remembered by her daughter, Georgiana, the TV legend, the singer, the actress. What a wonderful episode of our show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. Be sure and do that. And also leave a comment for us. That helps us grow when you do that. Leave a comment. Give us a like. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes with some of your favorite stars and celebrity friends of ours and so many others. And check it all out. Again, everybody loved Rosemary. Don't forget to subscribe again to the channel. Over the years, we celebrate her and we wish her happy birthday in heaven. Check out all the great things that are happening as Rosemary is being celebrated. And this is a wonderful shot again with Carl Reiner, Maury Amsterdam, Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke, and Rosemary as well. Truly the icon. So many wonderful photos. We did a little digging. I wanted to share some wonderful things. And what I loved was Georgiana herself was enjoying this tribute that we sort of put together here. Look at this one. Isn't that a great shot? And some of these she hadn't seen in a while. There she is with Jackie Gleason. Rosemary and Jackie Gleason, a regular riot. Chico, Marks, yeah. Tim Conway, great story about her discovering Tim Conway with Rosemary Clooney. And that, we didn't ask her about this, but even bowling. There she is bowling. So many years ago. Truly fantastic. There's with the Rosemary and the grandmas. Yes. There's another wonderful shot. Look at that. And there she is holding Georgiana. Yeah, it's terrific with Jonathan Winters. Look at that great shot too, huh? Can you imagine this? She was performing since the age of 3. 9 decades. Recognize everybody in there. There's Harvey Korman. Chris Korman's a friend of our show and a friend of mine. Look at all these incredible shots. Just a few here we sprinkled in. Maury Amsterdam, of course, and her dad, Bobby Guy. Bob Cummings show. Fun stuff. Yeah, great stories too she shared. Cindy Williams, of course, we did a special. Cindy, I met several times. She was wonderful. She just passed recently. Of course, she was a wonderful actress, performer. And there's Rosemary and Cindy Williams. Cindy Williams was Shirley Feeney on Laverne and Shirley. If you didn't see the episode where we celebrated her life, check it out on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Rosemary and Lucille Ball. Wonderful stories all the way. And there is Georgiana with the Christmas cookies for Santa, where only the crumbs would be left. There she is with Rosemary with Mary Tyler Moore. Promo shot, Dick Van Dyke Show. When she was on stage, the nightclubs over the years, performing, and look at that. And again, TV series and specials. This is when, again, I mentioned Caroline in the City. She got back together with Maury Amsterdam, who she loved. The iconic Rosemary. Bob Hope and the Love Boat. Just a few. There's the early days on the radio. Maury Amsterdam. Yeah. Check it all out, folks. There's a wonderful treasure trove of material about Rosemary. There's the book again as well. If you'd like to get the book, it's called Hold the Roses. That is available now. That's on Amazon. There she is as a kid. Rosemary. And of course, with the iconic Dick Van Dyke, he's still always been on my list of people I would love to chat with. Always, always. I've always wanted to chat with Dick Van Dyke, one of my favorites. And there they are together. Doris Day. Looks like Charles Bronson. Tomorrow Show, Tom Snyder, Georgiana worked on that show. There's Rosemary, Doris Day. Wonderful stories about friendship with Doris Day. Bob Cummings, of course. Hollywood Squares. Just a few things that we chatted elaborately about. Rosemary, Carl Reiner, Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke. With Dick Van Dyke. The gang from the Dick Van Dyke Show. A wonderful early shot of Rosemary singing. Again, she was a singer and entertainer before television came along. And just a beloved American treasure, if not international treasure. Celebrating Rosemary here on the Jim Masters Show Live. Entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series where we are bringing back the lost art of conversation. Enjoyed this episode, gang? You'd like to see it again? It's archived on our YouTube channel. We thank Georgiana for stopping by. We thank all of you for stopping by as well. Thanks for all the comments, the interactivity. Georgiana got a chance to see some of your wonderful comments as well. If you haven't had a chance to comment, please do on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate that. We've got another show that's coming up pretty soon. So, yeah, in about an hour, less than an hour. So I got to scoot off, get ready for that. A wonderful performer who's joining us in about an hour from now. I would like to reiterate that Rosemary would just be so happy with all this excitement. She was quite a lady. David, thank you so very much. A big friend of mine and a friend of our show and a big Dick Van Dyke aficionado extraordinaire. And good to have you with us. And Maureen in Arizona says, those iconic Rosemary hair bows. Yes, she would do a black bow in her hair. We didn't talk about it, but in memory of her husband, Bobby Guy, who had passed away quite young in the 60s. So she, great memory, absolutely. And they were all your mother's favorites and your favorites as well. Well, you are our favorites here on the Jim Masters Show live series. Thanks for being with us, everybody. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time, you enjoyed this episode, you want to see more, like, comment, subscribe, spread the word. And we appreciate you stopping by and spending some time with us, going down memory lane with Georgiana as we celebrate Rosemary, her 100th, her centennial, and the new CD and the documentary and all the other cool things. Love doing this and sharing it with you as well, whether we're talking about folks who are just up and coming or legends like Rosemary. It's always a pleasure to do it with you worldwide on the Jim Masters Show Live. Take care and be well. We love you all. I'm your host, Jim Masters. Thanks for being with us. Take care and cheers.